Welcome to the Marvel Alliance podcast, where we cover anything and everything to do with the Marvel Universe. From the comics, TV, and movies, we will go from the Mojoverse to the Earth 616 to the TVA in order to bring the Marvel Universe right to you. I'm the man without fear, Chris.
I'm your friendly neighborhood Brent.
Alliance Assemble, Volume 188. And Brent, it's been a week.
It has been a week. You know, we had some really cool stuff, some not so cool stuff, some BS, and some really cool stuff again. So I think that kind of sums up the week. But yeah, we definitely have a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah, it's definitely, and Phil's ready in the chat. Alliance Assemble. He looks like he is
That's
a
right.
fan of episode 5. Yeah, I think we are all in agreement of that. Julio's in the chat joining us. So definitely a lot to talk about. And I officially started my new job this week. So
Yep, full time at the new gig now. No more splitting time for you.
Yeah, no more splitting time for me. I had a very heartfelt goodbye on Tuesday, and it was nice. I think one of the best compliments I heard, and I heard it. Hearing it once was shocked me enough, but I heard it enough times saying enough people came up to me and said, "Thank you for hiring me." And I never, not saying I didn't hire or expect that, but it took me back. It took me aback. So, but I definitely miss it. I'm enjoying my new. It's getting used to it. You know, the littles are little, so. So it's been fun. It's been a nice. It's been a good change, and it's been definitely a lot of learning opportunities. So
Good. Well, I played a lot of Spider-Man.
Well played, Phil.
Without getting into the specifics, because I don't want to spoil anything for you. I had a glitch happen in Spider-Man where I have two, not counting the platinum trophy, I have 2 trophies left to get. One, I'm intentionally leaving for last. There's a reason why I want it to be last. It'll only take me like a minute to do it, but I want it to be last. The other one, there's a side quest. That side quest has 4 parts, and when you finish that side quest, you get a trophy, you get a costume, and you move on. Well, I got the trophy, but I realized later, past the point of autosaves being an option for me to go back to, that I did not get the costume. It didn't give it to me. It glitched. Well, act surprised. There's a trophy for unlocking all of the costumes. It's not giving it to me. So basically, I'm plowing through the game a second time, playing on the easiest mode, friendly neighborhood. And while yes, it is fun to just absolutely destroy, the bad guys, I'm like, I should have had platinum last Saturday. That's the night I should have gotten it. But
I'm sorry, man.
There.
Yeah, I'm at 20%. So
my second playthrough is at 61%. My first playthrough says it's 100%, but I'm like, that's BS. You glitched me on that costume. Insomniac did tell me basically I'm SOL.
I did get very excited when I put down the controllers on Sunday evening. I had just unlocked Ben Reilly's costume and 2099, so you know how excited I am right now.
Yeah, I assume you're rocking those for sure.
I will be going back and forth on those mostly. I haven't been too impressed yet with Miles's early costumes. So I'm hoping that the later ones I get will kind of fit my fancy. Right now, I'm not feeling many of them except for the one I'm starting with. So
I have some costume opinions, but I feel like we should save those for the future because I don't want to spoil anything else for you.
Hopefully, guys, and if I keep cracking at this next couple of weeks, we should have a review. So I appreciate y'all being patient while I rock it through. So.
Well, not that we'll get into it next week because next week's a very busy week for us. But I feel like by this time next week, I will hopefully have truly achieved platinum. I am past that point. That suit unlocked. I now have to unlock all the other suits. So gotcha. On my second playthrough, but we'll get there. But we got a lot to go through. So let's get into it.
Yeah, let's get into it. So we got. Let me start with the lovely network plug. So we are part of the Geek Ultimate Alliance network with 7 shows covering the wide range of geek and nerdom. To see the full schedule, check out the show notes below and subscribe to the Geek Ultimate Alliance network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network so you know when all the shows drop. We also have a Patreon, so if you want to throw a couple of shekels our way, we've got 2 tiers. Our $1 tiers, our tip jar to say, hey, you think you're doing a good job, and then we've got our $5 tier with ad-free episodes, early access episodes, and Patreon-exclusive shows, including our show, We Can Watch This All Day, the Marvel Alliance MCU Infinity Saga rewatch. We dropped the big one this week, Brent.
Yeah, we did. Infinity War is out there for your listening pleasure, and that means next up is where it all comes to a head.
Yeah, that one. This is the one because I don't know. Did you do Infinity War with fans?
Yeah, we did that one with
Okay.
fans.
Yeah.
Spider-Man: Homecoming was the first one we did
Okay.
on Fans
I
Without
meant to ask
Borders.
that one day. Yeah. So, yeah, Infinity War. It's a good long discussion, and yeah, the next one I'm really looking forward to. This month when we record Endgame. But yeah, patrons, hope you're enjoying all that content. We can't do this without your support. Joe just wrapped up his 30+ days of Halloween through with a walk through the multiverse. And DC Alliance guys have got it with DC Film Through the Years. They're on Catwoman watch. I know Travis Hines cannot wait to get into that. He talks about it all day long and enjoys it quite frequently. So I know he's very excited for that discussion. Then you got Katie with the Star Wars comic book canon corner. And again, you got Clay looking at Marvel Snap when he's getting those updates on it. So I always enjoy that content. But if you're not a member of our Patreon, totally understand. If you want to take 30 to 90 seconds and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Music, wherever you get that, we greatly appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, we want to thank our official sponsor, OrganicPriceBooks.com, for your omnibus hardcover collected edition needs. JP and the crew at OPB have got it going on with excellent customer service, immaculate packaging, ships around the world. Lovely final order cutoffs. Again, this was an easy. I couldn't believe this is coming back out. I've been waiting years for these to be reprinted. The Punisher by Garth Ennis, Max, Volume 1. So as always with first volumes of reprints, if they sell well, they'll be coming back. But again, I have a good feeling the Punisher with him donning the suit one more time in Daredevil Born Again. I'm pretty confident we're going to continue that trilogy. So. Then we got, I know you and I are really loving this, Spider-Man by Michelini and Bagley. The dream of this omnibus had taken years and years to finally happen. It is now a reality. So a lot of that. Use that code MARVELGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. Lets them know you're a listener, and we want to thank them for being our official sponsor. All right, so we've got a few pieces left of show notes. Some network issues. So first up, most importantly, when you're listening to this today, if you're watching this tomorrow, but if you're listening to this today, the Geek First 24-hour charity stream will be going live at 10 a.m. Pacific Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They've done this for years. I can't remember. This is the 5th, 6th annual.
Oh man, I don't even know.
I know.
It's been quite a few.
Yeah, it's been quite a few. It's been very successful. Travis Snell posted they have raised over $10,000 for the Extra Life Foundation, and this one is particularly going for $10,000 being raised to the BC Children's Hospital. They have done great work over the years. It's been Brent and I's honor to even be a part of this in any way, shape, or form, even before we joined the network. So lots of great stuff. They're doing a dodgeball. They're doing kind of a modified with their gauntlet, doing, I think, Marvel vs. Capcom, Mortal Kombat, all ending in a big Smash tournament battle. Dodgeball is going to be interesting. They're doing poker. And then the big one, the one that
poker.
everyone
I hadn't heard the poker. That's interesting.
Yeah, they're doing poker at that point.
I will have to check that out, and I will judge them in their play.
Yes, exactly.
I love poker.
But the big one that everyone seems to look forward to is the trivia battle. The trivia battle will start 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The teams have been chosen. Go to the Geekverse feed to check that out of where the teams. There may be one more person possibly coming in. I know your former co-host at Fans Without Borders, Ray, is a last-minute addition. He is going to be joining at that point. But I will be returning as the Marvel trivia question. I have modified the questions because apparently a couple of years ago, mine were way too hard at that point.
They were challenging.
I have eased back on the challenge. There are some little challenges on there because the teams, we were just doing straight, movies, and I was told to keep it MCU, Sony, and Fox at that point. So that is what I've done. And Marvel will be the midpoint. Mr. Snell just let me know about that. I'll be in the middle part of it. But Dave the Film Junkie is coming back to do the DC portion of the trivia, and then Katie from Star Wars Alliance will be in the Star Wars trivia. Excellent. So again, join that at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2 p.m. Pacific. Support it. It's a great charity. Again, it's for the kids. We love being a part of it. So, all right, last part before we get into this. We've got some changes next week, Brent. We've got a lot going on next week.
Next week, for starters, it's our last of the Friday night ones. So at least, for the foreseeable future. Who knows what the future holds with Marvel scheduling? But for right now, after next week, we are going back to our regular Thursday nights.
Yes, we will be going back, but we got a lot going on next week. So what's going to be happening is we're still going to be going live on Friday next week, but we'll be doing the Marvels review starting at 9:10 Eastern Standard Time. It'll be Brent and I reviewing the Marvels movie. Now officially the shortest MCU movie, and we'll see exactly is all the worries there at that point. I'm still looking forward to it. I'm not going to let it those lovely pundits try to keep me down from this one. I'm excited to see Kamala Khan make the big screen debut. Our Loki season finale will be recorded Saturday afternoon. It will not be live, and as soon as we get that, it'll just be the Loki review. We're not doing Comic Book Club. We're not going to do Fact or Fictions. It'll just be the Loki review. And as soon as we get that done, and as soon as Mr. Snell gets a chance to edit it, it may either drop that evening, it may drop Sunday morning. He's going to try to pump that out as quickly as he can and get it out for us. So we appreciate him pulling double duty, basically triple, quadruple duty, since he's doing this, similar stuff for Geekverse. So yeah, that's kind of what the schedule is going to be. So both of them by weekends, and it'll be on the feeds, and you're going to have a double dose of Marvel Alliance next week.
That is the plan. It should be a good time. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a busy time, but it's going to be a fun weekend. I still think it's dumb. I think it's dumb that they have the Loki finale the same weekend as the Marvels. But as just a fan, it's going to be a fun weekend. I'm looking forward to that.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm seeing it. This will be the first time with the new job. I can't necessarily get out as quickly, so I'll be seeing it. Probably one of the last ones in the group chat seeing it. I think about 7 or 8 o'clock on Thursday night.
There you go. It's not too bad. My show is at 6 o'clock my Central. So,
gotcha. All right, so that's everything. So again, Marvel's review live next Friday night, and the Loki season finale will be recorded on Saturday afternoon, not live, and we'll be dropping it hopefully later that week, and probably Sunday at some point. So, all right, Brent. Let's start getting into it. We got a long show. Probably the biggest part of this is going to be our Loki Season 2, Episode 5, penultimate episode of the season, Science/Fiction. So, non-spoiler thoughts. I think it's a little tough doing that one.
This one will be tough. I will say this. They wrote a big check with that cliffhanger last week, and in my opinion, they cashed it. They were able to back it up. They had the funds. It was a great episode. I really think this was a great episode. Some fantastic character work in this. I don't even feel like I can say with who, just because I don't want to I want to be able to talk about it more openly. But some great character work in this one. Some fun stuff. There was some absolutely hysterical stuff. There were some really funny things in this. And when all is said and done, another just straight up banging cliffhanger. And I'm like, I don't know which cliffhanger was bigger for me, this last week's or this week's. Luckily, it doesn't matter. I can enjoy them both. And I tell you, I am so ready for that finale. Like next week, it's like I got the Marvels. I'm going to come home and then I'm going to watch the Loki finale.
Basically,
probably within a half hour of being home, I'll be watching that finale. And so I'm like, oh, come on, this Thursday night, man, let's get there. Come on.
I see in the chat on the game, I put it on screen. I will point out some comic book reasons why they're going that way at that point, without trying to also spoil Brent that he's involved in reading something. So I got to be very careful and tread lightly.
I think you'll be okay too.
Okay.
I think I'll just speak openly. It's fine.
Yeah. So, but no, I really enjoyed this. It confirmed some things I've been kind of theorizing. It was really, interesting to kind of see exactly. I was just wondering, like, where are we going after this? The loom has exploded. What's going to be the after effects? And seeing these individuals in a different light, and seeing a big shift that Loki's been moving on this journey. We saw Loki trying to go back and forth in the sense of last season being villainous and kind of being the anti-hero. He has been moving further and further, particularly this season, not even anti-hero. Not even close to being anti-hero this season, and moving more towards the hero and hashtag family.
He really only had like one time when he really even tried to pretend to be villainous, and that was with Brad in the what was that third episode of the season. But that's really like the only time he's even tried to like come across like he was still the villain. For the most part, no. Like Loki is like this Loki has effectively reformed, which is weird because it's only been like a month or two since the Avengers happened in 2012 for this guy. But he has effectively, because at least by our time, time works differently in the TVA. He has effectively reformed though.
And again, this is the Loki from the end of the Avengers. And so it is a very different one that has seen what his future was going to be, and that he is always a loser, a one who creates despair and things, and will always be alone.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that is something that has ring true, and something that he's always kept in the back of his mind. So, but again, non-spoiler thoughts. This is a great Pentultimate. This definitely this removes the foul taste in my mouth from Secret Invasion.
I guess for me to declare that, I gotta wait till next week, because I was with Secret Invasion, even though it wasn't as good as it could have been. I was with them up through episode 5, and then they just fell off a cliff with episode 6. But so yes, I was telling a friend today who basically he used to be diehard Marvel fan, go to all the movies, and he's basically just fallen out of it. There was too much, he couldn't keep up, and the last show he watched was Loki season 1. He hasn't seen anything since then. I'm like, well, for what it's worth, in my opinion, Loki season 2 is right there in the quality level next to season 1. So if you like season 1, you probably will enjoy season 2. And I'm like, it's not at all like the previous one with Secret Invasion. Like, yes, there's one episode left, but man, they would have to have one of the absolute biggest falls in quality from in Marvel history at this point, I think, for it not to come out as a good episode. Does it mean it's going to be the best episode of the season? I don't know. This episode was pretty good. The one before this was pretty good, and so on, all the way back to episode 1. It doesn't have to be, though, for it to be a huge victory of a season for Marvel.
And even my quote-unquote least favorite episode was pretty still darn good.
Right. Absolutely.
So, but all right. So if you have not seen Loki season 2 of episode 5, please stop, watch it, come back. But if you're ready to be spoiled at that point, if you've already watched it, well, put on your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to talk about with this. So we're going to take our first ad break before we get into it. So as you know, these ads help keep the lights on in the Geek Ultimate Alliance network. We don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud. So give it that 3 count right now to turn down that volume before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. So we will look at, starting at the beginning. We start off with some very, last two episodes have been starting off with kind of eerie kind of music, some very different. It's not like the Marvel fanfare or anything like that. But this one kind of rang to me, the way I was listened to it after a couple of viewings, rang almost like, I'm a big fan of Stanley Kubrick, and one of my favorite movies of his 2001: A Space Odyssey, and it almost sounds like they're kind of homaging the kind of vocals that happen in that movie.
Yeah, they've had some fun with the Marvel intros, the Marvel fanfare. This season they've definitely mixed it up a little bit, and there was just a vibe to this one, right? Just a vibe, not like scary, spooky, just leaning that direction for me, like just a little bit of a vibe. So I'm definitely enjoying it. I think, though, I mean, other than the traditional fanfare that started with Doctor Strange 1, which is pure just serotonin bliss. I think like what they did with the old timey instruments and stuff episode when we met Victor Timely this year is my favorite fanfare of Loki this year or this season.
Mhm. So we see Loki, who has apparently time slipped to a time before the loom exploded, and he's wandering through a very empty TVA. And you hear this kind of warning going off saying it's gone into fail-safe mode. So this is rather interesting that, first off, it's making me kind of scratch my head, especially the second viewing. It's like, something has prepared for this. You don't prepare for a fail-safe mode unless the possibility is there.
Right. They called it a fail-safe mode. They said, let's see, like missed minutes. It was TVA. Okay, there it is. TVA code 1229. Not I don't know what that means. I'm sure those numbers mean something in Marvel history. The screen had like missed minutes up on the screen. It was like, oh, thank you for your service, but
Yeah.
it's you're all gonna die now. Basically, it didn't. That's not a direct quote, but that's
a
basically
spaghetti future for you is coming.
the spaghettification for sure is happening,
Mhm.
and it was cool. Like that spaghetti effect, like was just started happening around like Loki just saw it happening,
Mhm.
and I gotta tell you, we're gonna see that effect several times throughout this episode. So let me just tell you right now, while there was one time that was my absolute favorite, and we'll get there, not a single time did I think it looked bad. I loved it. I love the effect they did the whole way through the whole episode.
No, they definitely did good. I have no complaints about any VFX right now with the show nor this episode. So we do see him start time slipping again, and he time slips in front of a TVA elevator, and he catches an earlier version of himself looking at a TVA manual. And we kind of saw this was one of the sequences we also saw in the trailer with Loki looking at the TVA. We didn't realize who was behind him, but it was this future version of Loki.
Just to be clear, do you mean the like original trailers we covered on the show, or
Yes,
the
original
new?
trailer, yeah.
Because
Nope.
they did have a trailer.
They did have that.
last
I'd
week,
watched it,
but
and you haven't watched it.
No. I avoided that thing. I absolutely did not.
And
Want
so
any
far,
part
I'm
of that.
very glad because from what enough people who have enough courtesy to tell me that don't watch it at that point, apparently a lot has been revealed with that. So
Yes, definitely avoiding that. Just wanted to clarify which trailer we were talking about.
yeah, definitely the original at that point. So he then sees the TVA control center begin to spaghetti out, and he starts to time slip. And as we said, the video screen saying "Thank you for your service," and we get the title sequence, but it's a little different this time, with the letters slipping out before coming back, highlighting the time slipping that is going on throughout the episode.
Yes, just kind of showing Loki being alone and showing just one letter at a time disappearing. A little foreshadowing, really there.
Mm-hmm. So a theory that I've been seeing going around, and I've been thinking about this is, and I forgot to bring this up last week, that where this show takes place, and I've been wondering, saying that I kind of been starting to feel, particularly with the season started, like I believe this show was happening before Quantumania, and the Council of Kings we saw were actually a result of this. And this has officially been confirmed. I checked my timeline book, and that's when I really started thinking about it. So I got a timeline book. And yes, it is true. The official MCU timeline establishes that Endgame happened, and then both seasons of Loki are off its own branch of timeline, while the other Disney Plus shows and the MCU movies continue alongside. That means that the multiverse being open like this has created the Council of Kangs and all the members that we see at the end of Quantumania.
So that kind of fits with what we talked about at the end of season 1, that we kind of thought it was that way. A lot of it's like, oh, Multiverse of Madness can happen. No Way Home can happen because the multiverse has blown up. Even though they never referenced it directly in the movies, the multiverse has blown up. And so that fits. It's nice to see them put that. Now, I do want to say, like, this timeline book is an official timeline book, but like they'll change anything they want to change. Yeah. And ultimately what matters is what's on screen, unless they flat out tell you what's on screen was an error, like the Homecoming 8 years ago title card that they did, which they've declared that an error in both this book and other times, several times.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is how, like, He Who Remains was created, whether it's Victor or some other Kang at that point. I think that He Who Remains knew he could only be created through a branch timeline with a book with a branch timeline, and this could be achieved through Kang. And thus he sent Ravonna to give him the book to give Victor the book, knowing full well that this would lead to the loom exploding and leave the door open for his arrival. Again, we keep on going back to what he said at the end of these, with the end of first season. But also I go to what Mobius said, and it'll happen again and again and again. And that's because that's what is written. That's what's been predestined.
Right, just again and again, over and over, and just I'm still hung up on my loop idea. Like, was it a loop? Was it not? Like, I'm not. There's things in this that make me think it is. There's things in this that make me think it's not. That is an example that makes me think it is.
Mm-hmm. And He Who Remains had to be created through the branch timeline, and this could be only achieved through things happening with Victor as well.
Right, and so I mean that kind of shows like with what Ravonna Renslayer did and stuff 2 episodes ago.
And all the other timelines were pruned originally, but this was the one left, so that He Who Remains could be created, leading to the events that show that the show is playing out. So this could then lead to more branches, with all Kangs convening to get what he has in Quantumania, due to Miss Minute's message thanking people for their service. It's becoming obvious that this was all part of his plan.
Yeah, he has the whole thing mapped out. I mean, he said, "See you in a minute" at the end of last season. He meant it. Like, yes, I'm going to see you again soon.
So then we cut to a prison that is revealed to be on a branch timeline where Casey is a prisoner of Alcatraz. And I just want to say, who would have thought the good old Casey, good old by-the-book Casey, was actually a convict?
He is, but everybody has their standards, and he may be a convict, but he still wants to follow a little bit of rule and order and written policy like that. And I, you know what, I respect it. And apparently this is based on like a real escaped attempt or something like that. Like there really was in the 60s an escaped attempt from Alcatraz with a inmate named Frank.
Yes. Yeah. Like you said, it's the legend goes at this point, like 3 men who did try to escape Alcatraz. It was adapted into a movie with Clint Eastwood called Escape from Alcatraz, and it was also the baseline for the movie The Rock. However, the thing was that we don't know what happened to any of those prisoners. It has always been thought, since no bodies were found, they never made it to shore at that point. So the mystery kind of deepens. But I do like that they kind of take the idea and kind of play it out like Casey was one of those escapees. They use a dummy to fake out the guards that they think are in bed, and go through the tunnel, pop out of the sewer gate. And it's very much and it's very interesting just in the sense of like, oh, he's in a prison. And then I started putting the pieces together, and as soon as he popped out of there, even before the tag, I said, they're on Alcatraz. It's too good not to be. And then they popped up a branch timeline, Alcatraz.
Yeah, and this is kind of similar to what they did with the B.D. Cooper thing, where Loki was B.D. Cooper and he disappeared, like, playing on these like real legends, basically.
Yeah.
You mentioned it's a branch timeline. I feel like it's important at this point. Up until the very end of the show, every timeline we go to is a branch timeline. And I think that's relevant for why the people that we're going to meet don't necessarily remember Loki. Casey is arguing he's not Casey. His name is Frank. The other inmates are like, "Hey, you told us your name is Frank." He's trying to tell him he has no idea who he is. And who knows what would have happened. I'm curious if Loki was going to give him a choice to go with him or not at this point. But he ends up time slipping away, and we don't get to find out.
Yeah. And, I did like where Casey does say at one point, "Hurry up, if they catch us, they'll gut us like a fish," which is a nice callback to season 1, when Loki basically tells Casey the same thing, where if he doesn't give him the Tesseract, he'll gut him like a fish. And Casey's response is, "What's a fish?"
Good catch. Very good catch.
So Loki, as you said, time slips, and he slips to 1982 McDonald's, where we know Sylvia's ended up, and then time slips pretty much automatically to the wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man. And I love it as he kind of comes out of the time slip that he's kind of mimicking
it. Mm-hmm. That was a good gag. I definitely laughed at that one.
And what is he in front of?
Well, he's in front of the jet ski store, right? Like I'm forgetting the name of it right now.
Piranha Power Sports.
Piranha Power Sports. Thank you. But we finally get to see Mobius, or I guess Dawn, on top of a jet ski, right? Sitting
Mm-hmm.
there and he's talking about like the wind in his hair and everything. And he's on just the cheesiest background where it looks like he's at a photography studio
Mm-hmm.
and they've pulled the roll down in front of him. And it turns out he's not riding the jet ski, he's sitting on it trying to sell it. He is a jet ski salesman
Yes, he is.
in Cleveland, Ohio, which, they have lakes, obviously, but still, there's just, I had imagined him more in a coastal city this whole time.
Yeah, again, living his best life at that point. All our theories have now gotten officially proven. But before he even sees Mobius, because he's just there, but he quickly time slips out to Theater 25, which is a location that popped up during the first episode. This is also where he came face to face with his future with Mobius, and he saw how everything was going to lead back to death and misery. It's one of those defining moments for Loki, for this version of the character. So I found it interesting that he went back there and saw what was going on.
Yeah, this is that same theater where he saw the events of Thor the Dark World through Infinity War play out in front of him back in the first episode of season 1.
Yes. And then he time slips again. And, well, he starts time slipping again. We don't see him yet, but we get to see Hunter B-15, who is actually a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And this makes a lot of sense because let's look at the growth of her character. He started off as someone very cold, calculating, cruel, following everything by the book, willing to wipe out any timeline that the TVA deemed to be expendable. However, after Sylvie showed her just a fraction of her memories, she became warmer, welcoming. She wants to save all the timelines as she can. So B-15 will, of course, have taken, at this point, the Hippocratic Oath, meaning she has to protect life no matter what. I think it's personally starting to see back that even mirrored Mobius. Remember what he said? He was worried about finding out if he actually lived a good life, that he would actually want it.
He wasn't worried it was bad. He's worried it was good. And it turns out for him, it was good.
Yeah. And a couple of other things, though, a wink and a nod. She's telling a kid to not climb trees and branches. Be careful.
Yeah. Little on the nose there, like the snake eating its own tail last week.
Mm-hmm.
But but this shows you like the warmth of like when you look at Hunter B-15 here, I don't know if she's actually a pediatrician or she's working in an ER or something and just had a pediatric patient, but she's working with this little girl and she's helping her with her cast. And she writes on it, "Do not climb trees." She wrote it on upside down though to the girl's perspective. But could you imagine her going and doing all that stuff that she did as Hunter B-15? Not at first. Certainly I couldn't.
Yeah. But the year was rather interesting. 2012. Same year as the Battle of New York.
Yeah, and this is the only one when I cared, like, what month? When in 2012, yes. Right? Like, because she does, like, Loki pops up in front of her and she sees her and it's like, do you know do you recognize him from the news? Or have you not seen him yet? Like, just what month? It's the only one I cared. The whole rest of them, I didn't care what month.
The one where you're literally doing the Loki gif saying, "Tell me."
Yes. Tell me, just to give me no. But it was cool. And they don't invoke 2012 that often. And when they do, like it's usually tied around the Avengers. So I gotta think this takes place around the time of the Avengers.
What if it could be like a timeline where Loki did win?
What do you remember the speculation before season 1? Like it looked like there was a Stark Tower, Avengers Tower falling over, and what we now know was the void at the end of time, and from Goliath and everything. And people thought it was a timeline where Loki won.
Oh, and then when we came to find out, like all the theories before we even know about He Who Remains, like the name on it, Kang, like it was a play on Kang at that point. So.
Exactly. That would. I mean, it'd be fun to see that. Give me that What If episode. If there was a third season of What If, which I guess maybe we'll talk about later, actually, because I may have to bring that up. But if there was one, give me that episode. That'd be fun.
And so, but then we go back to Mobius, and Mobius the year is 2022, meaning that he and his kids have survived the snap. However, we learned that his wife is no longer with us. So she's either died, she's in the snap. We're left very open about it.
I got the impression she left. I also didn't even consider the fact that they survived the snap, but it's possible. It's also possible in this branch timeline the snap never actually occurred.
Fair point as well. So as you said, Mobius is now a jet ski salesman, and uh, I love it that he's trying to sell someone on it, and he's like, oh, I'm just gonna get an ATV.
Yeah, TVA, no ATV. Like, which
Yes,
one is
ATV.
it you're trying to get?
Mhm. And knowing all their ins and outs would explain why he was obsessed over with it, and would also show that the memory erasing doesn't completely wipe out everything. There's still a little part buried in the back of your mind that'll keep you longing for it, like how he praised it. I think deep down that Mobius knew that he was happier in his real life, and this is why he didn't want to go back.
Mhm.
And to him, all he really knows, and it makes him happy and way more complicated than just being a one-dimensional character.
Right. Completely agree.
So we then cut to another branch timeline, this time in 1994, where we see where OB is. And he's picking up a book called The Zartan Contingent, which is a book. If you've been paying attention to the end credits, it has popped up every single end credits there. So, everything that's been popping up, like it has come back. So, and so with that, he's still bubbly. He is still the personality we all know and love. And he's trying to buy this book and it's not scanning. And this woman says, "Hey, what are you doing back here? Quit putting your books on the shelf to try to get people to buy it." At that point, so he's an author and I guess a scientist as well, but he's also not having luck people buying his science fiction book.
I loved OB in this. He cracked me up so much. He's just genuinely the same excited person over all this stuff. And like I love like the shame when he talks about like how he had to get a physics doctorate and
Mhm.
stuff like that to pay the bills because he can't cut it as a writer. I'm like, it's really not something to be ashamed of. Most people would be very proud of such a degree. No, for him, it's the shame. And he was cracking me up this one so much.
hmm And he's living out in the wilderness. He's sort of like he is at the TVA and shuffled off of from society. Now this also brings us a new image from the credits we see is all the post-it notes from his home. And it turns out all these are ideas that he's jotted down, including a Flaxion calendar. And he has one that says who, and it's circled, you know?
Mhm.
Who indeed, he who remains,
Who
maybe
remains?
who
Yes,
remains.
I think that's a reasonable way to interpret that.
And so I recognize this when he goes in there. I like had this moment saying, we've been in this room before. It's in the TVA. This is the beginning of the TVA. This is his office. This is where he's working in the TVA. If you look at that background and compare it to that, you can even catch the mail chute up in the back lighting where that actually is. There's two big fans in the background that somewhat resemble the two windows from the office of He Who Remains. And they also had little spirals in them, showing that everything's, it's all these little callbacks. And I'm wondering if this is where the beginnings of the TVA start.
That's kind of what I was thinking. The same thing. I actually initially was trying to remember what. Initially, I wondered if it was supposed to be where Victor Timely was, like
hmm
the same building where Victor Timely had where basically he went for his own stash of supplies and stuff, where he took Miss Minutes and Ravonna followed them. But watching my wife's like, I think that's his office from the TVA, and looking at it again, I'm like, no, you're absolutely right. That is definitely his office, and it. So now, with that knowledge, I go through the rest of the episode thinking, are we back to the loop? Is this what starts the TVA? And I'm now trying to work out you remember last week with the book?
hmm
Loki looks at OB and he looks at Victor and says, his work is based on your work and his work is based on your work. So which came first? I'm now trying to square that with and Loki gave OB the book and
Yeah.
I'm like, or he, left it behind as we're about to see. But I'm like trying to square all this together, and this is why time travel, I just roll with it and let them tell me
Oh yeah.
what's going on.
Exactly. And so now we also see equations on chalkboard, potentially setting up the chalkboard and equations we see and catch in He Who Remains is kind of like chamber, throne room, whatever you want to call it, at the end of time. He also has many inventions scattered all over the place, and it's pretty much exactly the same way that you'd expect the character. It's a big mess at that point, and instantly, when Loki suddenly slips in, Obi just believes him right away because his life is just that dull and boring. But
he also refers to him as a character in one of his books.
Yeah, but he's also still a scientist. He does have a job at the university, and he's poured all his imagination into his books, and we see everything that all the copies. He says it's like the Sons of Yorn's is the most popular book of all time, but we know the truth.
I mean, they need to sell that book at this point, right? I want I bought the Scott Lang book. I haven't read it. I'm probably not going to. I just wanted to have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As like a Marvel collectible. I want this book and I want the TVA manual. I want the TVA manual more, but it just make these books and people like me, let's call it, will buy them, right? I don't even care what's in them. I want these books, both of them.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see exactly how they write it at that point. And I hope when this all comes crashing down, if it does come crashing down, he actually writes all about this experience. That would be a best-selling book right there.
I'm in. Yes.
Now, he brings out a point that when he's talking to Loki about science is about the how and the what, but science fiction is about the why.
Yes. And so he says to Loki, why are you doing this? Why do you want to go through all this pain and misery and hassle and everything? And Loki's answer is basically to save the TVA. Now, eventually we'll find a different answer out. But right now, the answer is to save the TVA. And he says, okay, Obi, use that and control your time slipping.
Exactly. And, but controlling time, that's the power of that's the power of a god, hinting at where I think things may be going. He's basically the living version of a temp pad, but at the moment he can't control it. He has no control over it. And if the TVA can't be saved, and it's all going to go crazy and let Kang's War take over the multiverse.
Exactly.
So now the way the show is going as a whole, and it's a time loop within a time loop at this point, wrapping around, it seems to be creating its own Ouroboros kind of never-ending cycle, eating its own tail. And so it's very interesting just seeing this idea that we're caught in a time loop right now, and that it's very much what's going on in the shows. What happens here is to play out the way it did, because the TVA is now in its rebirth stage, the fail-safe mode, as it was calling out. Thus it couldn't have any carryovers from the last time. Therefore, things need to be reset. So I think that in the end, theory time, looking at the ideas of what could possibly be, could it be that this Loki, created the TVA by recruiting all these members, and then Kang took over, and that's where he started pruning stuff to ensure that this would always happen, and create his own fail-safe program?
That's an interesting thought, and I know we've talked about this theory you had, which is getting more and more likely with every episode of Loki who remains basically at the end of the season, and that's an interesting idea to think of, that Loki actually precedes Kang in this circle, that this time loop that they are stuck in. Maybe that's the trick. Turn Loki into Kane, and just, if you were going to recast Kane, let's say, recast him actually as Tom Hiddleston, right? I don't love that idea, but I do think it's funny to imagine Loki circling back as one of the big bads again. But I don't want him to be a bad guy. At this point, I've loved the journey he's gone. I don't want him to be a bad guy, but I can't get it out of my head that it does seem like he is trying to basically recreate the TVA. He's trying to save the TVA, but that could lead to him recreating it.
Mm-hmm. So I saw this image going around, and I'm not sure where it originated at, but it got me thinking. So it was this image of the season, where the episodes were going this season. So we have episodes 1 through 4 on its own loop, all right, and then 5 through 6 in its own separate loop. And this all comes together and breaks both loops, leading to a time continuing in a linear fashion again. So as you can see, like the loops create the Ouroboros kind of snake eating its own tail, with potentially that Loki is the key to stopping all of this.
Yeah, which, man, just Loki again. I want him to meet Thor so bad, right? Just see Thor again. Like, imagine Thor's reaction. Loki is the key to stopping all of this and basically saving all of existence.
Well, maybe it's not even. Maybe it's Loki also, but it could be Ouroboros, OB. That might be the reason. Also, he is shuffled off and buried in the TVA, and never had his memory fully wiped. But because he was the key to breaking it all too.
Yeah, I do wonder if they've ever wiped his memory at all. Like, we've only heard references to one. We know it was wiped more than once. They basically have told us that, but we only know like a definitive timeline of one time, roughly 400 years ago, in that ballpark, or at least we think it was in that ballpark where it was. And I want to say that was Protocol 42, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same thing, because part of me for a second was like, when He Who Remains sent Miss Minutes back to wipe everything, is this what happened? The spaghettification of everything. Like, is that what happened when she wiped everything and they started over? I don't think it was, because the protocols are different. But I don't know. Like, trying to guess where this is going is really, really hard. And I love that for it. I love that.
Yeah, it's back to our WandaVision days,
It's Mephisto all along.
It is. So now they, with OB talking about like using the pens as an example, we've got to get everyone with the temporal auras from what you're talking about back together to start fixing your time slipping at that point. And so they're getting the band back together. And so you see Loki kind of time slipping back and forth to getting, the people back. Now, Obi could build a temp pad, but as you said, doesn't have the knowledge until Loki remembers he's got the TVA book.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's like, well, I got the knowledge. I don't know if I have the tools.
It's so convenient that he gave him the book and then time slipped away. Like, oh, just thank goodness, like, he did give him that book when he did, and that he grabbed that book. Of course, that's basic plot, but it was delightful to then see him later having used the knowledge that he got from there, while Loki was in the middle of trying to recruit Mobius.
Exactly. So then we go back, we cut to Mobius. He's in front of his house, and a couple little details from the house. So if you look out the window, you catch the window, there's a sheets coming out of the window showing that his kid's like slipping out a lot.
Sure. I mean, I saw that, and it's pretty clear that he doesn't have the best. I'm going to use the word control, but I don't really like that word in this case. But he doesn't have. They don't respect him. Let's put it that way. They don't respect him. They clearly don't respect his authority. And he did talk about working like 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, 6 days a week. So he's gone all the time as far as they're concerned.
Fair. Yeah, exactly. And so, but also remember, dear old dad also broke the rules, was playing games on the TVA computers, remember?
I do remember that. Yes. OB had to go back and fix it for him.
Yeah. Also, his son, one of them at least, I think he's got a little problem, kind of like from Sid from Toy Story, Burning Soldier.
Yep, for sure.
And that toy soldier very eerily like a hunter from the TVA.
And I think that one was the one named Kevin, which I'm like, why would you? Why, of all the names they could use, why would they use that name, right? Like that, that name obviously means, now not Kevin, just to be clear, but that name means something in the Marvel world. So I was a little surprised they went with that. But I was expecting Sean to be something super obvious, but I couldn't think of a prominent Sean in the MCU like production staff to go with. I'm sure there is one, but I couldn't think of who it was.
Yeah. So ever the salesman, one, I think Mobius is a little trusting in the sense of, did you follow me? And still doesn't find it odd of a person he saw at the thing knows where he lives at that point, and Loki does not do a good job trying to cover for it.
No,
but
not at
he
all.
actually tries to sell him one of the 2 jet skis since his wife is no longer there. And I love that Loki drops the line that Mobius used on him saying, The jet skis are a beautiful union of form and function.
Yep.
But also remember, Loki also gave OB his nickname.
Yeah, so he did he just give that line to Mobius, and then we see it regurgitated when the jet skis get brought up, and well, in the show's past, that stuff's not in there by accident. Like,
no, it's not. So unlike OB, Mobius doesn't buy the story, but his mind quickly changes when OB arrives with a new temp bat he created. And he said it took him about 9 months, during which he lost a job, his wife divorced him.
Yep, he's like, if you call 18 months fast, well, 19 months if you count all that happening.
Oh yeah, 19 months. Sorry, 19 months.
It's I think like just hilarious. It's like, of course, he was able to just read the book and reproduce it all because he's the one who wrote the book to begin with.
Yeah. B-15 is recruited with Casey, who we see is arriving on his shore. So we know in this branch timeline, the Alcatraz escapees made it. And in the end, we see Loki head back to McDonald's where Sylvie works. And she does not seem to notice that the bag of food that she had on her truck is already disintegrating.
Right, like, did you just forget your dinner there, Sylvie? Like, what are you doing? But, people put stuff on the car, then they drive off and forget about it. I know people who've done that with iPads before, not me for the record, but I know people who've done it. So it absolutely is a thing. It's not too hard to believe. But Loki shows up, gets her, and they have a conversation, right? They've been throughout the season that really began with last season, continuing on. They've been having this like almost philosophical debate over the concept of he who remains and them taking over and who should be in control. And this is just a furthering of that conversation. But I love that moment, like this development when she gets it out of Loki that his why wasn't to save the TVA. It's because he's lonely. Yeah. He wants to be with his friends. And then you got to think back on Loki. Like, he's never really had friends, right? He's had people he's worked with. He's had minions. He's effectively been a minion. He's palled around with the Warriors 3, but they weren't his friends. They were Thor's friend. And so this is really like the first group of people that he considers a friend to him. No wonder it's so important to him.
And even going further than that, like she's pointing out the idea of free will when the bartender goes, "Excellent choice." So Sylvie,
absolutely, yep.
There is a little Easter egg within the show. You got the Zaniac arcade machine, which was the movie that X5 was the star of. And if you paid attention to the end credits, at the very, very end, the line was used, which was done by the actor who played X5, saying, "You died. Insert your coin, loser."
Insert your coin, losers. That's right. This conversation, though, she basically convinces Loki, let them live, let them have the lives they were meant to have. And he tries to argue they should have the choice, and she's like, "It's no choice at all. Let them have their lives." And she works, right? Like she finally gets through to him. She finally convinces him to change his mind about something.
Yeah, and he returns defeated and tells him to return home, which is when we cut across back to Sylvie at this record store. We do see a monkey figure that is from the end credits as well, and a mug on the table that says "Take Me," which in the end Sylvie kind of wants to happen at that point. And at this point, we see a very top-down, very cool shot of a record player, which symbolically holds a lot of meaning. Records spin in circles after they're stopped and can start back up again. And records go with a predetermined path. And the same in each and every time, no matter how many, it's a big loop. Please don't tell me they're not doing symbolism on that one.
Yeah, imagine that, right? And when this world starts going all spaghetti, right?
Or spinning out of control.
Spinning out of control into spaghetti, maybe. This is the visual I alluded to earlier that I just loved this shot. The second time I watched it, I rewound and watched it a couple times. Just the way it was spinning around with the record and everything. Super creative, super awesome to look at. Absolutely just a beautiful shot, which is maybe a weird way to describe it, as the entire timeline was getting wiped out. Yeah. But that's what was going through my head.
And she's listening to "Oh Sweet Nothing" by the Velvet Underground. It tells the story of Ginger Brown, homeless and all out of love. The sort that sort of reflects Sylvie, who is now just drifting through life endlessly. However, the song also mentioned others that have nothing as well, reflecting the group being assembled. Um, I wonder if the person entering the door that we didn't see was Loki, and he might have also been the one that took the coffee cup. So in the end, we may be seeing a future Loki go back and see Sylvie this moment before it collapses to stop
Maybe.
it.
I'll be honest though, I kind of thought the coffee cup disappeared. Just
Oh, could,
spaghetti.
yeah.
Like
Fair.
I thought that's what happened to it. And at times seemed to slow down as that happened with as he's pouring the coffee, it seemed to like just be almost like solid as it was
Hmm.
coming out of that. But that's what I thought happened. But that said, I wouldn't be too surprised other than when Sylvie shows back up to Loki and says, "No, yeah, I was wrong. They have to help. We have to save everything." She she didn't see like Loki didn't see he seemed surprised to see her, and if he was setting her up to have to escape, then he would have probably been less surprised.
And she just kind of, as reality collapses around her, uses the he who remains is kind of wristband and pieces out.
Pretty much, just she's gone. She's able to. I felt like she did it a little late. I'm like, you need to be
I know.
speeding up on this,
I
right?
know.
But regardless, she was able to escape, and like I said, she goes
Mhm.
back to where Loki and the rest of the proto TVA is, I guess.
Yeah, and she's basically saying the branches are dying. There is no real choice, and they have to act now. So finally, they're all together, but it doesn't last long because that reality is starting to collapse. And one of the first ones to disappear is Sylvie. She is no longer immune to the reality collapsing, and everyone else is collapsing. And you can see Loki desperately trying to
Mhm.
hold on to the people, and in the end, Loki manages to slip through time without changing things. He finally breaks the loop once and for all. He no longer is he predetermined path, and he is able to alter things in the past. He says that it's about who, which might even be a nod to He Who Remains. And in the end, he wraps back to the point of where the time loon explodes, but this time he's conscious with knowledge of the future and knowing how to do things differently. And that's how the episode ends.
Yep, he's standing there with OB, truly OB this time back in the TVA. And is it next week yet? Is it next week yet? I'm ready to watch that next week. After watching this, I texted you. I was like, last week, if it reminded me of Infinity War a lot with like a snap, right? Like there was a
Yeah.
snap point when Victor Timely went all spaghetti. This week, it felt like we
And
were
no one had
getting
to aim for and no one had to aim for the head this time.
nobody had to aim for the head. This week, it felt like we were getting the other part of the snap when everybody dusted away. They just turned to spaghetti instead. And then Loki goes back in time to try and save it. Endgame. They're giving us Infinity War at Endgame again, right? Like it's fine. It worked the first time. Do go back to it. But I certainly did have these thoughts as I went through it. I did wonder kind of like why Sylvie retained her memories when the others didn't. You could chalk that up to her godhood status. You could chalk that up to her original branch was pruned and her new home branch was a different branch. I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's a question that I had come up.
Yeah, and so now we get into this lovely game, the final episode of the season coming up, maybe the final episode of the series, who knows? But prediction time. What are some of your predictions going into the final episode?
It At this point, I'm coming around on your idea. You're probably likely to be right that he's going to be controlling the TVA. You've been saying it since pretty much the beginning. I think you're gonna be proven either correct or really darn close on that one. Um,
Might get partial credit, maybe.
I think you're definitely getting more than half the points on that one. I kind of wonder if I think we're going to get a proper credit scene, but I kind of wonder
Okay.
if we're going to get something that says Loki will return in season 3. Like
I
it
want,
seems to
yeah.
be a pretty popular show for it. I don't know what else there is for them to do other than go into the Kang movies, but I'm hoping Sylvie survives. I'm hoping the others do. And I guess my ultimate prediction would be at some point the others get their memories back. They get their memories back and they know what's going on. especially Mobius with his kids.
Yeah. Either I think, like you said, I've been promoting that either He Who Remains, but here's another idea that there is a Loki behind He Who Remains, who not only was controlling him, but also everything else that has been going on. This actually has comic book precedent in Agent of Asgard run, where we saw Loki trying to change his fate. Throughout time, he'd been we'd seen it in the series, in the comic series, he'd been a loser that had been used to boost up others, which is something we've seen over and over again with Loki. However, he changed things. Eventually, at the end of time, encountered a new version of himself called King Loki, who was the one who was actually in control of everything, and him being outside the loop would make a lot of sense. Here's another thing to keep in mind. Kevin Feige, back a couple years ago, he received a new title, Marvel Chief Creative Officer, Film, TV, Comics. And so there is a series you are reading right now.
Yes, Avengers Forever.
Which
Forever. I'll be honest, I haven't read much the last couple of weeks because I've been playing Spider-Man so much.
Yes, that is fair. I don't want to ruin it for you, but a lot of things that he being in control of, also creative control of the comics, a lot of things that have also been happening in the comics have been also starting to play out in this.
And he's certainly shown he'll pull from the comics before.
Oh, yes. And I think there's something he is going to pull from the series you are reading right now with Avengers, that last arc at that point. I'm going to leave it right there for you.
I might purposely not watch it, read it then. I might just sit on it for another week and purposely not read any more of it this week. Maybe I got a couple Daredevil issues. Maybe I'll read those.
No, seriously, because I think it's a very cool moment that happens in the series that really kind of turn the script at that point. So, but there's also a lot with that there. So I think, the motif that's teased through this is also something of what's been going on throughout it. And it's also possible that Loki designed the TVA. Look at the similarities that could be just seeing things, because I'm breaking these things down. Look at the bridge going to the time loom. Eerily similar to the Bifrost Bridge.
Definitely similarities there. Yeah, I hadn't considered it that way, but that's a good call out.
Yeah. And someone who had to give He Who Remains the script of what happens, and thus has to be someone who remains behind He Who Remains, who's been there longer than He Who Remains.
Like a Who Watches the Watchmen kind of scenario?
Yeah, basically. So,
all right.
But hey, we'll see at that point. I'm very excited, and some quote unquote leakers have been putting out the time. It is right now looking like the longest episode of the season, which is not typical of Disney Plus finales.
Next week's is the longest. Okay.
Yeah, next week.
I've got I've got so many mute filters right now. I'm not getting a lot in my timeline.
56 minutes, so before credits, 51 minutes.
I'll take it.
Yep. So we will see next week, and we're very excited to break down that episode next week. So let us take our next ad break before we get into a trailer and some news. So as you know, listeners, to help keep the lights on at the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network, we don't get to choose what ads come on, and they can be a bit loud, so give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, Brent. We haven't had in a while a trailer breakdown. I don't even know the last trailer we broke down on this show.
It's probably the Marvels.
Could be. Very much.
Maybe the first Marvel is either the Marvels or Loki.
Yeah. Fair. Very fair at that point. So let me cue this up. As always, that volume will be down. It'll be reduced at that point, so feel free to watch along with us. Like this one, we've said it over and over again, on the show. There has been a lot of scuttlebutt about this series, whether it's rumors are it's really not that great. Marvel would rather ditch it, which is why they're doing all at once. And some other things were coming out as this was. It's going to be on Disney Plus and Hulu. It's like, oh, okay. But I'll have to say I'm very happy to report that this trailer is pretty awesome.
This trailer I thought looked fantastic. And of course, it's a trailer. It's literally the job of it. But you know what? Their job is to make good TV and movies also. So just because it's their job doesn't mean they always hit the mark. They absolutely did it with this trailer here. The other stuff, let's go through the trailer first, and then I want to address it.
Yep. So, all right. So starting off, we get what we're assuming is, young Maya at the point. Now, again, in the show, again, we know from the comics that Maya is deaf, but also the actress who's playing her, Alico Cox, also not only deaf, but also lost a leg as well. So they've also brought that into the show as well, as you see with at her at a younger age.
Yeah, and Alico Cox, when she was in Hawkeye, I think we both appreciated her performance. She was great. Like, was she my favorite part of the Hawkeye show? No, not necessarily, but I really did enjoy her performance. And I am someone that has been, despite what everyone's saying, looking forward to seeing what this show is going to be. She's a cool character. It's a fun concept. And I mean, yeah, let's call it what it is. I also like that she's effectively a Daredevil supporting character, right? Like, check your biases, people. But yes, like, I like that aspect of it. And so I was, when this trailer came out today, I was really excited to watch it.
So she's trying to communicate with the ice cream vendor, and he's like, I don't know what you're saying. You got to speak. And Wilson Fisk, there he is, Vincent D'Onofrio.
Yeah, they don't even pretend he's not a big part of this show. Don't even pretend. Straight up, here he is. You're like 10 seconds into the trailer, and
no Hawaiian suit this time. We're in this white suit.
Yeah, wearing the white suit this time. No Hawaiian for sure. And I feel just right away, it's like applause line for me watching. It's like, yes, Kingpin. That's what I'm talking about. Get him in there.
Yep, and he is not happy with the street vendor, and he grabs him and beats the living snot out of him.
Well, at least he didn't like shove his head in a car door and slam it repeatedly. Not that he would ever do anything like that.
Now, I love how it is, and they really play with the show is called Echo, but you hear each punch echoes throughout as he hits them over and over and over again.
I like the aesthetic of the Marvel Studios logo here and throughout the trailer when they have different title text come up.
Very Defenders.
Yes.
So, bloodied hand at that point. And he's telling Maya not be afraid. And we cut to
shot from Hawkeye, I believe.
Yeah, it's very much there at that point. Okay, I'm pausing here because this made me really laugh hard.
Make America
skate again.
Yes, absolutely.
Bam, right through it. So we know it's dropping all in January. Looks to be probably, my guess is she's over the grave of her father.
That's who I assumed as well. I mean, it's certainly plausible it's someone else, but we know from the Hawkeye show and the flashbacks there were, with like Ronan killing her father, like what her father meant to her. So that's my assumption.
Yeah, Wilson Fisk. We get a lot of voiceover from Wilson Fisk in this. There's so much pain in you. So much rage. So again, like, she is of Native American descent, and she is of the Choctaw tribe. And Alico Cox also is a member of the Native American tribes.
Yeah, and they actually went to some of the tribes for to learn about them, to make sure they had a fair and accurate representation of them in the creation of the show.
Yes, you gotta love Wilson Fisk in front of those abstract paintings.
Absolutely, every time.
So no bad deed. We're getting some back sequences, some background of how she's developing her powers, as we will find out. Goes unpunished.
That shot with the gun there is super brutal, right? Like, that looks like something out of The Punisher.
Oh yeah, this is pull no punches, and this will be Marvel Disney Plus's first TVMA show.
Right.
I'm trying to pause because something's coming up, and here we are. Blink
Yep,
and you
there
miss
he is.
it.
Devil of Hell's Kitchen himself. Absolutely excited to see it. I actually, before I was able to watch the trailer, I was waiting on David to get back so we could watch it together. We had to have a meeting and watch it. I did that picture did come across, so I did see that, but it's okay. Like I knew he was in it. I was glad to see he was in the trailer, and it is like an actual like live action Blink and you miss it. But my God, man, just seeing him here again, just
Red suit. We've got
yep.
the red suit.
And you just know somebody's gonna be like, well, where's this yellow suit? Whatever. Why does he have two different suits? Like forgetting that like Spider-Man has 10 different suits that he wears, and Iron Man has like 50 of them or whatever. And it's like they just have more than one suit. We don't need an explanation other than, do you wear the same pair of clothes every day? Neither do I. Neither do they.
It's ridiculous that we have to somehow give people a reality check, right?
No joke.
Look, yeah. Oh my goodness, these fight sequences are cool.
And they've described her as the villain in this show. And still,
Yes.
like, and so it's like, oh, well, I guess we're rooting for the villain, except for when Daredevil's in it. And then, sorry, I got to root for she's effectively the protagonist, but I'll be rooting for the antagonist on that one.
And we've got our confirmation, also call back to the comics when Wilson Fisk lost his eyesight. And so we knew at the end of Hawkeye that she did shoot him. We weren't sure exactly how that was going to play out, but yeah.
I mean, and I don't think too many of us are that surprised that it's something like this, right? Like you got shot in the eye, something along these lines is going to happen. I'm sure eventually he'll have his eye back effectively one way or another. They'll do what they did with Thor. They'll make it so that you can forget about it going forward.
Yeah.
But
so all episodes, Echo streaming January 10th on Hulu and Disney Plus. Again, we've got some time to still think about this, Brent, how we're going to tackle it at that point. But you said, based on Marvel's official release stuff back months ago, it is 5 episodes.
Yeah, I looked at, if you go to Marvel.com's actual webpage about it, it says it's a 5-episode event. 5-episode streaming event is the words that they used. And how many times have you heard me say I want Marvel to play with the episode counts? I'm glad they're playing with the episode counts. I would rather what they think is 5 episodes to tell the story than pad it out to 6 episodes. I'm glad they're doing that. But there was all this talk going into this week about, oh, Marvel's just dumping it. That's why they're doing the binge or whatever. I don't think that's the case. Yes, the trailer sold me, right? It did its job.
Yeah.
Job well done. Marketing achieved. You've hooked me, right? Like if I was on the fence, obviously I wasn't, but if I was, you've hooked me. But here's the thing. It's TVMA, which nobody was talking about. I don't remember ever hearing anyone say like people questioned it about Daredevil. They've questioned it, or at least for rated R in relation to Deadpool 3, but I didn't hear anybody say anything about Echo being that. So you have that aspect. You have Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin all over this trailer. It feels like it would fit in with the Defenders, right? It feel like if this was alongside the Punisher and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, etc., it feels like it fits right there at home with the rest of them. And they're doing the binge thing, and they're putting it on Hulu, which is different. It's the first time they've done that, but it does put it out there in front of more people. If they're trying to dump it, they're not going to put it in front of more people. I think they're just experimenting, and I think they're giving it to us in a format that is trying to invoke the Defender saga, as it's called on Disney Plus. That's what I think they're trying to do. And you know what? So far, it's working.
Yeah, and the idea, they have to make the trailers appealing because, again, if you didn't have Vincent D'Onofrio, you didn't have the Marvel logo, no one would necessarily associate this with, the character from Hawkeye at that point.
Right. And I think it's okay to use Vincent D'Onofrio as a selling point.
Absolutely.
Yes, you should use the actors in your project as selling points for it. And if Vincent D'Onofrio's presence helps sell the Echo show, I don't see a problem with that.
No, I don't see a problem with it at all. They're very smart about it at that point. It's always a worry of mine that, like we've said, like you can cut a really good trailer and then the product ends up being that it's not so great. But this gives me hope. Like I have a lot of hope seeing exactly the first footage. And there were also a number of Hollywood reporters that got to see a number of clips from the show in the past week. So the story is coming out of the Hollywood Reporter, saying that, in some ways to them, it looks like the successor to Daredevil with from the Netflix show, but what the tone, like you said, the color palette, the idea of what the characters are, TVMA. And so what they were saying when they got previewed several scenes, they said it's a little on the grittier side for Marvel, and it shows a breadth of what Marvel is capable of. Said Brad Winderbaum, the studio's head of streaming and television animation. It's sort of a new direction for the brand, especially for Disney Plus. Director Cindy Freeland said that the different tone of the show evolved from the fact that it follows a villain. People on our show bleed and they die, and they get killed, and there are real world consequences. Echo comes off, as they say, on the heels of the big article that says Marvel is overhauling its TV business at this point. Tonally, the footage, they say, screened at the press hints of Daredevil, Breaking Bad, and John Wick, in some ways like Marvel's version of a cable drama rather than an MCU streaming series. What do you feel about that comparison?
Well, this is where I'm going to confess I haven't actually seen Breaking Bad. So
okay,
other
fair.
than the pedigree of it, of its reputation, I can't comment much there. But I know that it was a beloved show, and if you're going to be compared to it, that's not a bad thing. I love John Wick, and the Daredevil, the Punisher shows. Like, yes, if you are invoking those kind of shows, yeah, absolutely. And there's that one shot that it is very, where the guy shoots him, is very Punisher style, and
yeah.
I'm a huge believer and proponent that most Marvel properties should be accessible to maybe not all ages, but most ages. TVMA is not that. These characters don't have to be TVMA to be great, but to work, to be great. But that said, they have enough Marvel projects. They can experiment with it if they want. And the fact that this is the first TVMA thing, and at the time will be the only TVMA thing and the only effectively non-PG-13 project that they've had. I don't know. I'm sure I Am Groot would be rated less, and whatever the streaming equivalent is on those recordings for the ratings. I think it's okay that they're doing that. But did Echo have to be TVMA? No. But when you tell me you're invoking the Defender shows and you're gonna do it in that kind of style, it's fine with me. And I love the street characters, right? Like, how many times have I said,
Same.
I want a Spider-Man Daredevil team up, and ideally I want them fighting in a gang war, right? Like, I want them taking on Kingpin and Tombstone and like just those kind of characters, like those street level characters. And so I like that they're building out the street level of the MCU more with the Echo character, branching off from what they did in Hawkeye with her.
Yep. Julio agrees. Marvel needs more street hero.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the beginning of it. They say the show is Marvel Studios in other ways as well, centering on an indigenous character who is deaf and communicates with ASL. Representation was both very important to Freeland and her team. Freeland grew up on the Navajo reservation in New Mexico, took her department heads to the annual Choctaw powwow in Oklahoma for inspiration. Her team also took ASL lessons. Freeland said, I needed to have some basic language where I could talk to Cox and look her in the eye and say, that was nice. Again, more emotional, just some basic words for her. And this also came out from Variety. It wasn't in an article. I was trying to back channel, but it came out from their Twitter account. And we're going to have a lot of things to say about Variety in a little bit. With Sydney Freeland teasing the Marvel hero will have very different powers in the comics. Her powers in the comic books is that she can copy anything, any movement, any whatever. According to Freeland,
basically Taskmaster, just to be clear.
Yeah, Taskmaster. She says it's kind of lame. I will say that is not her power. I see what she's saying. I think it's a very cool, like you said. I always thought fascinated by, but what I gather, and a lot of people have, unfairly taking out the context. I know what she's saying in the sense of when you're trying to do this for television, trying to get some spectacle, it's not the most, as I'll pull from Deadpool 2. It's not very, what did he say?
Probably
It's not
cinematic or
photogenic.
something like that.
Yeah,
It's
cinematic. It's not very
the
cinematic.
I actually think that's a really cool power. And
I think so too.
I like the way they incorporated it into Taskmaster. I would have appreciated it if they had done just a more straightforward comic accurate of that for this. That said, if you're gonna do that, and the characters she is going up against are characters like Daredevil, it's just gonna look like a street fight, right? Like that's what it's going to look like. Like that's what
Hmm.
you're going to see. And that can be fun, that can be cool, but I don't think that's going to really highlight her abilities. I don't think it's visually going to highlight him as well. So I'm okay with them mixing it up. I'm okay with trying it out. Are they going to keep to the spirit of the character? So far, I feel that they have in Hawkeye. I feel that they are with what they've showed us in this. So as long as the spirit of the character is there, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and so the next part, it's going to be spoilers because this isn't official, but I'm going to go into spend the next less. It'll be like 5 minutes or less, so we'll give you a signal to come back aboard if you're watching. But skip ahead next 5 minutes or so. We'll kind of keep this quick about what her powers are rumored to be, and this is coming from Can We Get Some Toast? Exclusive from her. First thing, the first powers that Maya will be displayed through spiral tattoos that manifest on her hands, granting her enhanced strength. Yes, her powers are indeed related to her Choctaw ancestors. So that's number one. Number two, that Maya will gain an echo will be sharpshooting abilities. Maya will have very different Choctaw tattoos from her first power. When using these powers, she will manifest the same gun as her ancestors, empowering her. And then the last power that will be gained is enhanced speed and durability with the ability to determine the potential trajectory of a person's items movement. It's basically the Sharingan from Naruto Amao. Maya will have another set of Choctaw tattoos that are different from her previous powers. So these are all connected to her tattoos at this point, and I'm guessing that's what some of the seeds that we saw in the trailer are going to be related to.
Likely, yeah, and that fits with the rumors I saw as well.
So, all right, come on back at that point. And I talked to Brent beforehand, and we felt like yes, it's technically a spoiler, but it's not something that'll like should ruin a person watching the show necessarily.
Yeah,
So,
even I said I was comfortable with it, and I'm super spoiler averse. So
yeah. So, but all right, well, I'm excited. I'm definitely feeling a small sigh of relief with what I'm seeing. I hope the trailers does not have a really good trailer and the show kind of disappoints. But again, we're going to review another show. We don't know how we're going to do it yet, but we'll figure that out later. We still got a little time.
yeah, that part we still have to figure out because I mean it's 5 episodes. It's a lot to watch, and so it'll be fun, but it's still a lot to get in and to watch. And typically, I've watched these shows at least twice prior to reviewing it. I'm just going to tell you right now, if this comes out on a Wednesday, all 5 episodes binge up. We record that Thursday. I'm not going to have time to watch it twice. Like I'm just going to call it for that. I'll tell you that.
Barely
right
going to
now.
have time to watch it once.
We got to figure it out. Well, and we will. And we'll let you guys know what the plan is.
Yeah. So stay tuned for that one. All right. All right, Brent. Let's get into this story that has been gaining traction, good and bad. I
was going to say it seemed to gain a lot of traction on the day it came out, but the next day I saw a lot of people speaking out against it.
So we're going to get into this. So this is coming from Variety. It was entitled Crisis at Marvel. Jonathan Majors' backup plans, the Marvel's reshoots, reviving original Avengers, and more issues revealed. This is by Tatiana Siegel. Tatiana Siegel has received over a number of years a lot of people fairly, in my opinion, and seeing that a lot of clickbaity things not being true, people calling her out for misquoting, taking things out of context, and basically not being the great reporter by any stretch of the imagination. And as Brent and I will be kind of going over, and we'll try to call it out where we can, a number of these things, including something I just saw come across the Time feed, even next week's Loki finale will also be possibly debunking things that she has put forth in this
Yeah, I
article.
mean, I've seen a couple things about Loki's finale, and I'm just like, Scoopers, can you back off, please? Just please back off.
Yeah, and
Especially you
that's all I've
Scoopers
said. That's
who
yeah,
only tweet and you don't even have websites you link to. Like, you're not
yeah.
monetizing. Just I'm starting to hate Scoopers. Sorry, sidetrack.
That's fine. And the scoopers I've seen in that sense didn't reveal anything. Just said Loki will debunk her other claims in this. So we'll see. So going that off the hand, take this with a grain of salt. Brent and I have enough knowledge in the sense of what we are very much questioning versus things that are kind of aligning with what we've heard over and over enough times. So it goes into the idea that the September summit usually is a happy occasion in the past. Right now, not so much occasionally. So that occasion, they say, she says, goes into going over a lot of disappointments on screen, a legal scandal involving Jonathan Majors, and questions about the viability of the studio's ambitious strategy to extend the brand beyond movies into streaming. So are going to go into a little bit of what they talk about with Jonathan Majors. So we've known for a while about the legal troubles, and it's just not looking positive for Jonathan Majors with this case. One of the things they go into is possibly at the gathering, supposedly executives discussed the backup plans, including pivoting to another comic book villain adversary, and they call out like Doctor Doom. But they bring out saying, but making any shift would carry its own headaches. Majors was already a big presence in the MCU, and has been very positioned as the franchise's next big villain. I kind of laughed and chuckled when I saw like they discussed like Doctor Doom. I wonder how serious that discussion was. But even if Jonathan Majors necessarily will have to be cut because of what the future is with the court case and things like that, you could easily recast and keep Kang and just write a 1 or 2 line throwaway thing that they could have, still keep Kang. I don't see this as something that they can't pivot.
So, okay, quote, like Doctor Doom. A comic book adversary, like it doesn't say Doctor Doom, and of course, all the regurgitators ran with, "Oh, they're talking about replacing King with Doctor Doom." What? That's not even what this says. But
Details
there's
matter,
two
people.
big
Details matter.
there's two big things in this article that I feel is okay. Have you ever been in a meeting at work where you're coming up with a project or there's a problem and you're just spitballing ideas for how to handle the situation? We could do this. We could do that.
Yes.
Oh, that wouldn't be good because of this. Oh, this is a possibility, but we'd have to figure out that, right? That's what this feels like to me. A
Mhm.
a brainstorming session of we could throw out Doctor Doom, we could throw out Magneto. Let's get Apocalypse. He's done some stuff with that. Like they could just be shouting out names of people and
Let's get
characters that
Jackpot.
they
Can we get
have.
Jackpot?
And come on, let's be real now. No Jackpot.
Oh,
But
no.
it's the thing is that's what it feels like to me. I don't love the idea of yes, I want to see the MCU Doctor Doom. I don't love the idea of him coming in to basically clean up after Kang because they have to pivot away from Kang. In Kang Dynasty, in Secret Wars, there is very heavily established precedents for Doctor Doom's story and involvement in a multiversal storyline called Secret Wars. We read it on the show. Like that is fine.
Yeah.
But why would you not just recast? And I think it's an interesting idea. It's not what I would go with. I don't mean like make Ravonna Renslayer King because they are two distinct characters. And I think if you make them the same character, you're pulling from the relationship that they have. But they've already established one, you could just straight recast Don Cheadle style. It's me. I'm here. Deal with it. Let's go. Right. But they've already established in the MCU that variants do not have to look alike. Yep. One, we had a movie with three different Spider-Mans.
Well, even one of the whole big Kang thing, you had like one of them look like a freaking Skrull.
Some of them looked different in that. Absolutely. Yeah. But can I just say 2 words to point out that not every variant has to be identical with each other? Alligator, Loki. That's all you need. Like, it's a thing in there. They don't just recast him. If they're not
Yeah,
going to go with him for whatever reason, I say whatever reason, if the results of the court case are there, Marvel's going to leave him behind. Okay, I get it. Fine.
yeah,
Let's move on. Just recast him. Make your life
yeah.
easier and just recast him instead of trying to shoehorn a whole nother villain in to what would have been King Dynasty. Just recast and be done with it.
Yeah, and I think that's where this is headed. I think this is part of them being, and no pun intended, being gun shy from what happened when they did fire James Gunn, only to welcome him back. So they're trying to give the benefit of the doubt at
And in
that
my opinion, that is the right
point.
decision. That is the right move. Court of public opinion is what it is. He's technically still considered innocent until proven guilty.
Yep.
Fine. Just recast. And cynically, they don't even have to do that. It's not going to stop people from going to the shows. They don't have to recast. But to me, and he really did what he's accused of. I'd prefer just get him out. Just fine. Just take him.
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. Recast him, bring in someone else. And as Julio said, the character is more important than the actor. In general, vast majority of the time, I think that is the case. Asterisks for Chadwick Boseman and Black Panther at this time. But in general, in this case especially, just recast him.
Yeah, All in the Game saying would have helped if they stuck with the idea of a different looking variant from season 1 in both Multiverse Madness and Quantum. Yeah, but again, there's still time.
But
They've got plenty of room to do that. Yeah,
they could still do that. Just have King, and I'm King, and he looks different. Boom, he's been recast. Like it's quite literally not a hard problem from that standpoint. It's really only hard if you absolutely don't want to recast.
Yeah, and again, recasting is very simple. They don't need to pump the brakes and do a whole new direction for this. Don't pull a WB, with what they did to Zack Snyder. Don't do that. That's dumb. This is simpler than they're making it out to be. They also go into saying, like, I've kind of titled this "Too Much of a Good Thing," saying that Marvel is grappling with the November release of the Marvels. Been played by lengthy reshoots and now appears is likely to underwhelm at the box office. This is all an unprecedented turn of fortune that words are tough. The recapturing this phenomena, I understand, like, from what happened in Endgame to now, lots of things have changed. Other things have changed with that. But looking at the idea of what they need, we've gone over this, that they're trying to tighten up not doing quantity and focus on quality products at that point. And they bit up more than they can chew, and they put out way too much content, and it wasn't necessarily sometimes the best content. They cut corners, things like that. Okay, they're trying to course correct. They're not to throw out the baby with the bathwater. They're trying to salvage and see what is good and keep that and move away from things that weren't going to be there. So this is stuff we've all heard before. But with the Marvels in particular, one, you're not going to have the stars out there as of right now. As of time recording, the SAG is still SAG strike is still ongoing, and Brent and I will always say pay them what they're asking. But the movie apparently has cost $250 million.
Ridiculous.
Right now, it is currently tracking for 75 million to 80 million, far below the 185 million of Doctor Strange. Directed by Nia DaCosta, and this is her it's not her first film, but her first major box office like tentpole, AAA, whatever you call it. Now, this is where we start getting into eyebrows, and she says eyebrows raised. This is where I started smelling red flags there.
I mean, there are eyebrows raised, but they're not at Nia DaCosta for this.
But this is where I raise eyebrows at the author of this, saying that DaCosta began working on another film while the Marvels was still in post-production. The filmmaker moved to London earlier this year to begin prepping for her Tessa Thompson drama, Hedda. And the comment that was made, saying a source familiar with production. So I love anonymous sources. If you're directing a $250 million movie, it's kind of weird for the director to leave with a few months to go. All right, I'm going to call this out. This is where I was like, someone's playing with information here. And when Eric Davis put this out, I said, thank you, Eric Davis, for putting this out. So he's a reporter for Fandango, if I'm not mistaken. Says this happens all the time, by the way. Also, DaCosta was still very involved in post-production, according to him. It takes a lot to direct a Marvel movie. Nia DaCosta was only 30 when she got the gig, youngest director ever. She's a tremendous talent who's making history with the Marvels. If you don't want to see the film, all good. If you want to see it, then have a great time. But let's show Nia DaCosta some respect. She has earned it with some. So again, I agree with it. I think this is like taking bits and pieces of what's going on. The fact that I didn't believe for a second that she wasn't involved in some way, shape, or form with post production. I agree. They have other projects. She probably even told Marvel what she'd be doing, but they didn't kick her off the project. This is trying to make it seem like they're not happy, and Kevin Feige has taken back the reins, and she has no say in post production. Give me a break.
It's not just that they have other projects, they have other contractual obligations that they have to do. And keep in mind, this movie had its timeline switched. It was the Quantumania was deemed further along, and they swapped places. Originally, the Marvels was going to come out before Quantumania. The additional photography thing, I'm sorry, the reshoots thing, as they put it, literally every single Marvel movie ever has had reshoots and additional photography. Now, again, we've talked about this before, but the difference is additional photography is usually built in up front for things they want to pick up later because it doesn't work in principal photography. They also can do reshoots at that time. I want to say that 4 weeks isn't even the longest Marvel movie amount of reshoots. It's less than a month, guys. It's not that long. And that blows me away. But that said, $250 million is absolutely ridiculous. And this movie, in my opinion, should not have that high of a budget. To me, this movie should have been 150 to 180 tops. And when you're projected to come in around 70, it's going to have to do gangbusters overseas for this movie to come out okay as far as the balance sheet goes. So it's not that this is all, and that's not the first time I was trying to find out if that's the first time I've seen the 250 number or not, but I strongly disagree with a lot of the stuff about Nia DaCosta and the other stuff, but it's not everything here, is bad because the budget is out of control. As far as Nia DaCosta leaving, keep in mind that just because a movie is delayed, let's just make the numbers easy. It's delayed 6 months, right? That doesn't mean they're working on it for 6 more months. The movie is budgeted for X number of days of production. Part of that time, it's sitting on a shelf. It's sitting on a shelf waiting for its release day. Part of that time, that's what it's doing. It doesn't mean they had 6 more months worth of time to do VFX on it. It means they had the same number of production time to do it. Now, you can make an argument that they should be letting the VFX people go home at night and have lives outside and just spend the same number of hours, but, spread out over more days. Yes, I'm totally in favor of that, of course. But it's not like she was going to be actively making this movie until the day it releases. That's not the way it works.
That's why you have second units to do things, second unit directors, second unit, like they do a lot of things that, the main director isn't necessarily need to be there for. It's part of the process. Come on, people. Let's keep your eye on the ball. Brent and I have gone over many, many different times the VFX issues and things like that, but this is one that it kind of also was interesting to read. We talked about Victoria Lawn, so a lot of the scuttlebutt with that. Sources are saying, she's been kind of scapegoated to be the full blame for the VFX issues and the problems there. But they called out She-Hulk, and what was interesting about this is supposedly. The original arc of She-Hulk, a flashback of star Tatiana Maslany's transformation into She-Hulk character didn't take place until episode 8, the penultimate episode. But after Marvel Brain Trust watched footage, it realized the scene needed to happen in the pilot episode so that the audience could see the character's backstory early. That meant the VFX team was tasked with fixing the mess in post-production. And this is a quote saying, the so-called bad VFX we see is because of half-baked scripts, says one person involved with She-Hulk. Gotta love, again, unnamed sources. This is not Victoria, that is Kevin. And even above Kevin, those issues would be addressed in pre-production. The timeline is not allowing Marvel executives to sit with the material. All the while, Marvel was bleeding money, a single episode of She-Hulk costing $25 million, dwarfing the budget of a final season episode of Game of Thrones. So $25 million average on an episode. So 9 episodes for a 30 minutes or less show.
Well, okay, so again, details matter. $25 million for an
Yes.
episode of She-Hulk, absurd. Just absurd. If it costs
Yes.
$225 million for that show, that is absolutely ridiculous, and they need to get that in check. But this says a single episode costs that much. It doesn't say every episode costs that much. It doesn't
Yeah,
say the
correct.
average price was that much. Just there's at least one of them that costs that much. And for that
Yeah.
one, it's way too high. And frankly, the money didn't show on screen. In whatever episode
Correct.
it was, the money didn't show on screen. The people saying it's not Victoria, it's Kevin or whoever, or it's above Kevin, it is important to remember who are these sources. To me, you could make an argument that it's somebody who was upset with what happened to Victoria Alonso.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not saying if they were upset justifiably or not. We weren't there. We don't know. I'm just saying it's somebody who is probably very likely upset over that situation. And let me be clear, I'm not saying it was Victoria Alonso who's this background source. I'm just saying somebody who didn't like how that all went down. And so, of course, they're going to speak more negatively. But the part that does pass the smell test, we know what just happened with Daredevil. They went back to formula on that, as we said, right? They didn't entirely scrap everything. They're keeping some of it and they're moving forward. It sounds like that's what needed to happen with She-Hulk much earlier in the process. They shouldn't be getting to these points in production when they're making such drastic changes to the script. And I know somebody's thinking, what are you talking about? This is the way Marvel has always worked. It is the way they've worked when they had 3 movies a year that they were doing at their absolute height. As soon as they came out in 2021 with 9 projects, and they did that 2 years in a row, they were, which keep in mind, they were forced to do it. That wasn't Feige's choice, but it was his problem. It's not his fault, but it was his problem to deal with. They needed to change their process. They're finally doing that with Daredevil. As hyped as I am after that Echo trailer, it's worth noting this was made under the old style, right? It's not new. We haven't seen anything come out under the new style yet. They do need to solve those pre-production woes of getting their scripts in order. And thankfully now going forward, they're going to have showrunners that will help with that. So I agree with some of this stuff. At $25 million is ridiculous, but if it's important to know, and I even misread it that way too at first. It's not saying every episode.
And I apologize
was
for misreading it.
It's saying, well, I mean, that's how I took it too. We go back to our chat. I talked about that in the chat. It's like that's 225 million is dumb for this. But people don't go past the headlines of the regurgitators, and you definitely need to in this article. There's a lot in here, and this is just another example where some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't.
Yeah. So some of the other, as we kind of bring this one to a close, one thing calling out, talking about, I called this section MC fatigue is quote unquote real. She brought out Blade with some of her quote unquote unnamed sources. With Marshala Ali signed to play the main character. The project has gone through at least 5 writers, 2 directors, and 1 shutdown 6 weeks before production. One person, here we go, unnamed source, familiar with the script, says that the story at one point morphed into a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. Blade was relegated to the 4th lead, a bizarre idea considering the studio has 2-time Oscar winner on board. Amid reports that Ali was ready to exit over script issues, Feige went back to the drawing board and hired Michael Green, the Oscar-nominated writer of Logan, to start anew. And speculation is that they're slated for a 2025 release on a budget of less than $100 million, a deviation from the big budget spending. Then this comes out, calling this out at that point, saying that from Michael Starbury, saying, I worked on a draft of this before the strike. Never saw a version where Blade was the 4th lead or it was a narrative led by women and filled with life lessons. But I suppose a lot could have happened since I had anything to do with it. He was in 99% of the scripts I was a part of. So again, to your point, Brent, earlier when people are spitballing things, I'm very much. I said I cannot believe that someone would put something out there like in the sense of Marshala Ali is going to be the fourth lead, two-time Oscar winner is going to be relegated to the fourth lead. I'm sorry, that no doesn't even pass the smell test. I claim that's just no.
Well, even more than
She's
that,
wrong. Yeah.
Blade was never Blade wasn't in the plan. He approached
Yeah.
Marvel with, "Let's do Blade. I want to do Blade." And they're like, "Okay, we're not going to turn away working with you." Like,
Hmm.
they're not going to do that and then make him fourth on the call sheet. This is
Yeah.
absolutely absurd. It makes no sense. It just this one there's no there's no way I can look at this and think there's an element of truth to this one. It's just total garbage.
Yeah, no, she's just wrong. I'm sorry. That's like I can't believe you even thought that was worth putting in there at that point. Um, then we get into toward the end, like possible solutions that they've considered. Sources have been in talks to bring back the original Avengers. Robert Downey Jr., Scarlett Johansson, both who were killed off, and they're supposedly coming back. And it's like, okay, we've heard these stories before. We know it's going to be happening, Secret Wars, and I guarantee you, this didn't bring up anything new. It's just like stop trying to claim something that that you're trying to claim as your own. We've known this for a while.
Okay, so back to that brainstorming session. This
Yeah.
screams we could bring back the original Avengers, and
Mm.
somebody mentioned this was one of the ideas that was thrown out, but they report this one and not the other 30 ideas that they also said. And is there
Yeah.
anybody who realistically doesn't think they're all coming back for Secret Wars?
Yeah.
I bet you money that's already planned.
Oh yeah.
It
I guarantee you,
this
like
is
Robert Downey's been already said like I'm good for Secret Wars.
and
We'll
like
talk later.
they put this out there, and then when it happens and they're back, people are gonna go, oh look, this article was right. No, it was the plan. I guarantee
Yeah.
you it was the plan the whole time.
Exactly. And it's going to be very interesting when we do get Deadpool 3. I'm call it a big long shot, guys. I'm pretty sure that movie's going to be a hit. With all the callbacks and everything like that. But what I will say, the end of the article, I think is probably the most factual thing you could say. Writing the Marvel obituary will be ill-advised, said Jason Squire, professor emeritus at USC School of Cinematic Arts and host of the movie business. Kevin Feige is the Babe Ruth of movie executives, and Marvel has the most profitable track record in movie history, no question. That is probably the most true thing of the entire article that could have been said.
I mean, yeah, there's no denying that particular line. Like, I mean, that is objectively fact.
So we'll just have to see. Again, some of the stuff we've known, some of the stuff we're calling hogwash to, and the people who are trying to get clout saying Marvel is in trouble, things like that. Okay, not a great article, not a good look at that point. Some things we've known, some things that has been out there, and some things are just wrong. Sorry, Variety. Next time, do yourself a favor and check your sources a lot better, because this was a lot of did not get the clout that you wanted.
Yeah, completely agree. Couldn't have said it better. Reading through this and just the whole time, I'm like, all right, this makes sense. This doesn't. Where it makes sense for me boils down to they expanded too fast. The budgets are out of control. Absolutely, the budgets are out of control, and they need to change, especially on the TV side, their script and production line. Their their development stuff, like stages. Those need worked over because it's not working. The way they did it isn't working anymore for that. So that's pretty much all I have to say on this piece. Just
Yep.
more nonsense than not, unfortunately.
Yeah, go away, Tatiana, please. At that point, I'm sorry, but I've, since a lot of other stuff you've done called into question, including lots of different things, like I as soon as I see your name, I usually question necessarily. It's like, oh, all right, I'm taking this with a grain of salt. So. All right, let's go to some more positive things. We're going to take our final ad break for the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, these ads help keep the lights on the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network. We don't get to choose what ads come on. It could be a bit loud. Give it that 3 count before they come on. 3, 2, 1. We'll be right back. And we are back. All right, Brent. I'm going to, we got feedback. I think we got a few ones. You put out the signal even before all these lovely things came down this week. What do we got for listener questions?
Yeah, DC Outlaw, with the new format of MCU shows abandoning the 6-episode miniseries, what do you think will be the new average episode count? 8, 10, 13, 18? I don't know. I hope there's not one.
Yeah,
I mean, there
I'm
technically
with you.
is. You add them all together, you divide by the number, there is an average. But honestly, 10 probably sounds right for that kind of thing. That would be my best guess is 10.
Yeah, I like the idea of 10, but I'm with you. We've said it before. Give them the episodes they need to tell the story. Don't set them with a limit. If they need 10, 10. If it doesn't need 10, then do 8. It whatever fits the purpose of the series.
Yeah, and we'll certainly
Easy.
tell you if we think it needed more. If we get to episode of 5 of Echo and we're like, it needed at 6, we'll tell you.
Oh yeah. We've said before a number of these shows needed 1 or 2 more episodes. So
All right, from Phil. Assuming the TVA has a role to play in Deadpool 3, who would you like to see appear from there and why, excluding Mobius, who has been rumored? So, other than Mobius, who would you like to see from the TVA pop up in Deadpool?
we got to see Casey.
Casey was the second name I thought of. The first name being Hunter B-15, right?
Yep.
Which, granted, like they're the most obvious ones because they're really the only other TVA workers on our main cast.
I got a better one. I got
OB?
Not necessarily just OB. I've got the one that we need to see. The
Miss
one
Minutes.
Miss Minutes. We
Yeah.
gotta see Miss Minutes.
I mean, Miss Minutes, it'd be fun to see both Wolverine and Deadpool's reactions to Miss Minutes. So I wouldn't exactly balk at that one.
It would be fun. So yep.
Okay, from Josh, it says, is the Watcher aware of the TVA? From his understanding, the TVA is outside of time. So would that mean the Watcher does not know about them? I've been thinking about that, and I think that's a hard question to ask because he's certainly aware of multiple timelines.
Yeah.
And some people would disagree about this with me, but to me, time travel and multiverse are two sides of the same coin. Like you're splitting hairs there with what they technically differentiates between them. And so my best guess is that yes, the Watcher is aware, but it wouldn't take much to convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say yes. It's the easy answer. The Watcher watches at that point and doesn't interfere, but we know he does interfere.
He always interferes eventually.
Yep.
All right, and then from Omari, there's been a lot of fan casting for Reed and Sue in the Fantastic Four, but do you have any wishes for who should play Johnny or Ben? I think Doc Ray Montgomery, from Stranger Things, could really capture Johnny's adventurous side. And I haven't seen Stranger Things, but I assume that's who you put in the picture of this tweet, Omari. Do you have any fan casts for Johnny or Ben?
Not Johnny so much. I do like the rumor, and I hope it still ends up coming true. Daveed Diggs as Ben Grimm.
Yeah, that one was fun. Ultimately, I do like that one. Ultimately, it's like I would like someone who's Jewish, at least partially Jewish
and
for
Daveed
Ben
is.
Grimm. Yep, so that fits. So I'm good there. And then this is such a cop out answer, but I'm going to give it for Johnny. I don't have a specific person in mind. I would like someone close in age to Tom Holland because I enjoy. While it's not the same for me as the Spider-Man Daredevil relationship, I do enjoy the friendship that Spider-Man and the Human Torch have, and I wouldn't mind seeing that played off even a little bit. So I would say that's the best answer I have for you on that.
All right, that it, or we got any more?
That is it.
All right, thank you all for the questions. We greatly appreciate it as always every week. All right, so fact or fiction. So coming from last week, Sylvie will be killed off by the end of Loki season 2. 6% said fact, 94% said fiction. Technically, has been killed off, maybe.
I mean, technically, you got it right.
Yeah. Number 2. We will see MCU Disney Plus shows no longer beholden to 6-episode structure. Moving forward, we'll see typically than we typically experience. So, fact 75%. We just talked about that. 25%.
Kind of happened with Echo.
I know, yeah, really. And special presentations will now solely be used to hype up major projects like Fantastic Four and X-Men. 67% said fact, 33% said fiction. All right, Brent, it is your turn this week, so hit me with them.
All right, so first up, I don't think this counts as a spoiler, so forgive me if it does. We will see either Peter or Miles from the Insomniac games have a cameo in the Insomniac Wolverine game. For what it's worth, they did confirm it was set in the same world.
Yeah, I could
not in the
see
game.
that,
Like one of the directors confirmed it.
So you want the character, not like a poster or a small Easter egg or like a news report.
Right. In the and it might be NPC style, but show up and just have one scene in it. So
just for what they've even said about the game itself, I would like it. I think it would be kind of cool maybe as an ending kind of their end credits at that point. You know, Wolverine and Spider-Man have had many interactions in the comics, have had adventures together, so I could see it being more like an end credits thing versus an in-game thing.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking along the same lines. I'm going to go with a fact as well. They were asked about Wolverine being in this game, and they basically said they want to let the team working on Wolverine work on Wolverine, and they didn't want to like steal the thunder and have them show up here first. But the situation would be very different for Peters or Miles. So I think fact one. I think one of them will show up in Wolverine. Ungraded pick, probably as an NPC. It's not like I'm not expecting you to be able to play as Spider-Man in the Wolverine game.
Spider-Man gonna be murdering people straight up.
All right, so this next one, the number I originally said was $1 billion. I'm now changing that. After this article, I decided I'm going to change it to 850. Decided I'm going to go ahead and just change the numbers to that. Like, just that's where it's at. But it really holds true for that. But all right, there will not be another MCU movie that tops $850 million at the box office until a Spider-Man or Avengers film. I was originally going to say $1 billion. I'm lowering it down. You're saying false. So you think Deadpool there will be 3. Something else that will top them? Deadpool 3 counts. So I mean, they said it's in the MCU. I'm going to say fact on this one. I'm going to say Deadpool's coming in under that. I actually don't really. It's not a strong fact. I just think it's possible. But only because all of the box office seems suppressed right now. That's really the only reason I'm saying.
It's not a hard one, yeah.
But I feel like if any movie has a chance to do it, it's Deadpool. Like Deadpool 3 is absolutely the best chance to do it. You have Deadpool, you have Wolverine, that alone, plus whatever cameos I think will help drive people. That is by far the best chance to do it.
Yep, I can totally buy the idea that you go that direction. So makes sense to me too. I'll still stick with mine, Deadpool 3.
My final one. The next Disney Plus Marvel show that is dropped weekly. So not the binge model. The next Disney Plus Marvel show with weekly episode drops will have this 9:00 Eastern, 6:00 Pacific release time that Loki has right now. They're going to do it again.
Oh yeah, I think they've been very much well received by that. Yes, many times over. Keep it like that.
Yeah, this one I just really want to put out in the world, so I got to say fact on it.
All right. Well, I will drop those on Sunday afternoon. Let your voices be heard. And Brent, let us get into The Punisher.
Yeah, so I read this one last night, and it I won't lie, I actually went back and was like, wait a minute, did I forget something? No, I just had to go back and revisit the final page of the previous one. But Frank basically talks about how hard can it be? You know, he's on the ground, he's basically dying. He looks like he's dead, and he manages to get himself up off the ground and drags himself all the way back to his apartment. I don't know how far it was, but he had multiple bullet holes. Like that alone, I was like, is he gonna make it? Obviously he's gonna make it, but is he gonna make it? I don't know.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. Like even at the last issue, we were just like, well, we know there were other, issues at that point that we knew would obviously make it, but he was looking rough for the wear. But he proves that he's the Punisher. Not many things can keep him down. He's able to drag himself up all the way up the stairs to his apartment. Yeah, he's looking for a little rough at that point. And this is one of those issues where I love the splash page, especially the one where we see Frank behind one of his the female neighbor that's going through and just looming over her. We knew he wasn't going to hurt her, but it was just that kind of an all kind of quote unquote scary scene.
Right, right, absolutely.
But yeah, this is also an issue we kind of check in with our other vigilantes. We check in on the serial killing preacher.
Yeah, who, he's got that woman like helping out of the church, cleaning up and stuff. Her hearing's gone, she can't hear anything, and he's like makes a show of like, "Oh, how's cleaning up that spilled wine doing for you or whatever?" And you realize it's blood coming out of the confessional with this guy as an axe to his chest.
Yeah, he's getting a little more brazen and just I think he's almost like asking to get caught. Then we get, I think I remember the guy's name is the elite at that point, trying to get rid of
Mhm.
anything bad in his neighborhood, and he basically drops a grenade in a hot dog sales because he just doesn't want it in his neighborhood.
Pretty much. It's like, why'd you buy the hot dog then? Just kill him and move on.
I know. Well, this one got to live. He just lost his cart, so.
That's true.
But you get his neighbor and the punk rock neighbor helping Frank kind of get out, and I love the punk rock neighbor saying, "I'm not gonna squeal anything. I'm gonna protect him. He's gonna be, no one's gonna get a word out of me." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. You are actually going to accidentally squeal, aren't you?"
It was funny because he was like so sure of what to do, and then
Hmm.
and she was like so meek and concerned and not confident at all. And when the time came, she did the right thing. She did the right thing. She tells him the right thing, and he blows it. Just blows it.
Yep. And yeah, then we also see the other vigilante out there. What was his name? The
Payback.
payback, just murdering someone on TV, and you gross out in the sense of how the reporter reacts to the CEO getting murdered on TV. So
I did think
just
that
kind
was
of a
funny when they were like, "Oh, she's gonna puke on TV. She's gonna puke on TV," and then she did.
yeah, she did at that point. So we'll check out to see now that the punk rock neighbor has accidentally squealed to Maguchi's minions at that point. So we'll just have to see what happens in 2 weeks. 2 weeks, we're gonna take a break because we got, as we said, we got Marvels, we got Loki. We're gonna take a 2 week break from that, and also Factor Fiction as well.
Yes, yes. Next week, it's just Marvel's, just Loki. That's it. You
Yep.
can send
So
in questions, but we'll save them for the next episode.
yep. So well, Brent, if we have seen the time check at this point, definitely our longest episode we have had in a long time. That isn't a review episode.
Absolutely, it is. Well, I mean, we did
Or
have a review
solely.
in it, but there was stuff to talk about this week. Again, like we said at the top, we had a cool show, we had some nonsense, and we had a cool trailer. So, overall, good
Yeah.
episode, I think.
I'll call this an absolute win.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you.
All right, Brent, tell people how they can follow you.
Yeah, Brentech Prime on Twitter, and I'm trying to remember to post on Threads a little bit more, and Brentech Prime, TikTok, Mastodon, wherever else that I'm at as well. I use the same name on all of them, so just pick one.
Yep. And I want to thank our official sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. Use that code MarvelGUA at checkout to get $2 off every single order. You can follow me on all the socials at Chris Balga. You can follow this show on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Marvel A Podcast. You can email the show at marvelalliancepodcast@gmail.com. You can follow the Geek Ultimate Alliance Network on Twitter at GUA Pod Network. Feel free to tweet, email if you want to provide feedback, ask questions. DMs are open. Continue to rate, review the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, wherever you listen to your podcast. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you all for sticking with us live in the chat. Thank you all for listening. Stay safe out there, everyone. And as Stan the Man would say, Excelsior, true believers. All right, Brent. It is last Marvel movie for the year of 2023. Let us get some predictions out there before we see what is going on with the Marvels. So hit me with some of your predictions.
Out of the gate, very poor box office, but well reviewed. Like I know that's
Okay.
broader than the movie itself, but I do think it's going to be fairly well reviewed. Just not nearly enough people are going to go see it.
Yeah, I can agree with that one. One of mine, I'm gonna call this is coming from my this year's Marvel predictions that we did back in January. This
I
this
didn't
will
even think to
be
look at those.
yeah this I'm gonna call it that this will be the movie that we will see our first look at an incursion happening.
Oh, I like that.
So
I
I think we're gonna start seeing it.
I feel like we might get some sort of line about mutation again, like a second reference to the M word. You know, we got it for Miss Marvel already once in the finale of that show. I feel like it might come up one more time.
Yeah, we'll get da-na-na-na-na-na-na.
You
Will
know
we
what?
hear
Sign
that?
me up. Sign me up. The answer is no. I don't think we will hear that.
Yeah.
But I'd like.
I'm gonna go back to one of my other predictions about. I think we're going to get a Young Avengers probably the biggest Young Avengers confirmation that we've received since we've started playing around with this idea that they're coming. I think this film's gonna really lean into that at some point.
I think. I feel like at some point Carol's going to tell Kamala she's okay sharing a name with her. Not necessarily like, you can use my name, but like I'm happy for us to share the name.
Mm-hmm. All in the game saying Rotten Tomato score higher or lower than Captain America 79%, box office
Higher.
lower or higher. Well, which one? Higher.
Rotten Tomato score of higher than Captain Marvel's 79%. Box office lower than an $80 million projected opening, or the line that he set. I take the under.
I will go lower than 79% and lower than 80 million. It
Okay.
pains me to say it, but I will go lower.
Fair enough. I
So
mean, it could come in at 78. You can be exactly right.
Do we want to give our kind of opening domestic weekend? What our prediction is?
63.
63.
63.
Yeah, I'm gonna go lower than that. I think I'm gonna be in line with Travis Snell. I'm gonna go under 60 million. I'm gonna go 59.
Okay.
I don't want it, and I hope it proves me wrong.
Well,
So
I feel like I priced this right at you if it ends up going higher, but
you did,
even though I went
okay,
first, so I guess not. But I wrote those down in our feedback notes, so we'll
Okay,
have
good.
those here
Perfect.
in a couple episodes when we start getting some numbers. My word, though, if it's lower, like if it really is lower, it's so. I haven't seen any kind, and I don't normally see any kind of foreign market projections. It's gonna need to do really well overseas in a way I don't think it's going to for this movie to come out okay. I mean, it might be one of
Yeah.
those movies that when you factor in streaming, what gets attributed to it from streaming and home release sales, that it doesn't lose money, but I think it's going to have to get to those stages to not lose money.
And especially now that it has the IMAX screens, you know?
Right. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, it would have been without the IMAX screens. I'd be quite a bit lower, but
Yeah.
luckily it does. I actually, looking at the schedule, thought about switching my time to an IMAX showing, but to one of those, but it didn't fit my schedule very well, so I just had to keep it where I have it.
But all right. Well, we will see you next week. Our the Marvels review will go time we've been going at this Friday. This coming Friday at 10 Eastern Standard Time, and our Loki review will be recorded and dropped later that weekend. So 2 doses of Marvel for you. Marvel Alliance coming at you live. We'll see you all next week. Enjoy the Marvels. Enjoy the season finale of Loki. See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.